Hey guys, BitReaver here, and today what I'm going to show you is how I go about editing our 1v1 match videos that we've been doing for our first year anniversary games at ARC7. I'm using Adobe PremierePro, which is a paid-for video editing tool. It's fairly cheap if you want to do a monthly subscription for the software. And basically what I'm going to do is walk you through the process that I take. So let's get started. So I'm going to assume that you have Premiere Pro already installed and that you have created a new project. And what you'll see when you create a new project are basically your project window. This is where all your assets are going to go. This will be your timeline, as you'll see in a minute. This is your window, which will be your output. This is what you'll use to watch the video as you're editing. And your tools panel is over here that has all of the tools that you'll end up using. So to get started, Martin has provided us with a really great set of assets, video overlays that he's put together. And this has all of the images that we've been using for our scouting and private matches and quick drops and pretty much everything you need. So first thing I'm going to do is just click this folder and drag it on over into the project here. Just going to go through and import all of the files. Looks like it's not going to be able to import the font. You'll have to install that font separately using Windows. And basically what we'll have is all of our assets here, right in the main project window. The next thing that I'm going to do is come over here and grab this is footage. So Carthage was kind enough to record the match between NICU and myself, and he sent that over to me, and I'm going to be taking that footage and putting it together in Premiere. So now we have all of that footage created. So let's say we want to create a new timeline, and what that'll do is it'll give us sort of a canvas that we can put all of our clips together in order to create our final video. So what you can do is you can just right click on your asset here and then go down into a new sequence from clip, and what it'll do is create a new sequence. The sequence settings will match your video clip so that you know your output is correct and matches your video format. And then what you can do, I like to separate my timelines outside of my footage. Just going to go ahead and delete this and select all of these guys and just drag them right down in here. So one thing that you should know is you can press the plus or minus button to zoom in and zoom out, or you can grab on the corners of your scroll bar here to zoom in and zoom out. And so this scales your time, so you can see, you know, I have 17 minutes of footage. We're probably going to be cutting this down into you know, maybe a 5 to 10 minute video. Alright, so we have all of our footage laid out here. The next thing we want to do is come up with our intro slate. If you've seen the ARC7 videos, we always start off with some kind of intro slate just to set the expectation. So I think we're on 1v1. Yeah, that's the one we want. Since this is the battle between me and NICU, go ahead and just take this and drag it down into our timeline. Now you can drag it down. Each one of these tracks is a video track, and what the way that the video tracks work is if you put it on top of another track. Let's see if I zoom in here. So this is the video track asset, but then if you turn off this track, you can see the other track behind it. So let's just drag this to the beginning of the timeline here. So that's the first thing we see when we start. And Martin has been using this Clan Ghost Bear Warhorn. So we're going to put that down on our audio track. I think we usually started a couple seconds after the start. Now this is really loud. I'm not going to play this. So you can see over here on our audio levels that we're actually clipping, which means it's way too loud and you're going to get a lot of static. So the way that we turn the volume down on this specific clip is just to right click it and go up to audio gain and set audio gain to a certain level or adjust. Right now it says its peak amplitude is 0.4, which means that it's going above 0. Anytime an audio clip goes above 0, it means it's going to get you some static, and that's what you don't want. Usually what you try to do is you try to edit all of your audio so that it peaks somewhere between 12 and 6. And what that'll do is, keep everything at a nice even level, make sure that you're not, your viewers and having to turn up the volume and turn down the volume as they go. So let's go over here and set the gain. I'm going to set it to -12, and what that should do is bump this down by a lot. So now if we play it, we should see, instead of the audio bar coming all the way up above 0, we should see it go somewhere around 12 and 6. There we go. Alright, so the other thing that we're going to want to do is scale this. If you can see, this asset here that I dragged in, this title slate, is too big for the screen. So this is your viewing area here, and you can see that it's getting cut off. So the way that you do that is there's a panel called Effect Controls up here, and if you don't see it, you can always go to Window and then select Effect Controls, and that it should show up. Now these are all the properties, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but this is how you actually animate your and do things like fade out and things like that. But one of the other things you can do is change the scale and position. So if I drag these position sliders, you can see it changes, moves up and down. If you change something and you don't know how you set it and it doesn't look right, you can always hit this Reset Parameter button, and it'll just take it back to the default. Now we're going to have to figure out what the scale is that we want, because if we scale it too low, you can see we get this black border behind it. So I think the right scale is somewhere around 60, 68, maybe even 66. Yeah, that looks about right. So the next thing we're going to want to do is find the clip that we want to use. So the first match that NICU and I had was a heavy match. So this is our assault match. I believe this was our heavy match. So you can see as I drag back and forth, I can preview the video. I'm actually giving you a sneak peek. That was our last match. Our last match was heavy, so I'm gonna find the first match here. It's the light match where NICU totally destroyed me. It's the medium match. Alright, so this should be the heavy match. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, so this was the clip we want. This was our first match. So let's drag this over here and start looking at it. Now, what I like to do is I like to find a good spot that's right before the match. Usually when you start rolling with your capture software, you start a little bit ahead of time just to make sure you don't miss anything, but what you end up with is a lot of useless footage. So you can see we're rolling, but there's not a lot going on, and it takes a while to get to the action. So what I'm going to do is just scroll forward. And let's see. If you look down here on the audio track, you can see when people are actually talking, because you see these little mountains in the audio track. Anytime, that's your waveform. So anytime someone talks, there you go. Actually, that's a good quote. Gaelic was watching the match as well. He's saying some funny stuff, so I want to get that in there. Yeah, let's start there. That's actually probably a good spot to start. He says, "Welcome to the Coliseum." So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So basically, you have two options here. If you want to start the clip at this point in time, you can come over here select the razor tool, and then click. You can see wherever you have the razor tool highlighted, that's where it'll click, so just be careful. If you want, you can hold down the shift key, and what that does is it allows the razor tool to snap to the current timeline, so it's a lot easier for making much more accurate cuts. So if you want to cut here, just hold down shift and then click there. And then we won't need this anymore, so make sure you have this highlighted and then just press delete, or you can right click and hit clear. Either one will work. So let's make sure that this is the right starting point here. Yep, that looks good. Now, the one problem here is that Gaelic sort of mumbles at the beginning, and I think we really want to capture that part, so I'm actually going to adjust the audio to make it a little bit louder. And again, there's a couple different ways that we can do that. We can come over here to the audio effects, so if we have our track selected here. Also, important thing, make sure you have the right track selected when you adjust parameters. There's been so many times that I've adjusted parameters on the wrong track because I had something incorrect selected, and it didn't end well. I had to go back and find what I did, and it just takes a while. So let's do this. Okay. So this is called the keyframe. This is an animation. So keyframes are a way of changing a property's value over time. So I'll show you how to do that. What we're going to want to do is take the audio level, because Gaelic's voice is fine starting at this point. So if you listen, you can hear that pretty well. The voice isn't quite hitting 12, but it is peaking at 18, which is not too bad. But we want to really beef up this area. So we know that we want the audio to return to normal when we get here. So what you can do is just drag your cursor to this point in time, click on the video, and then this button right here, add remove keyframe, will place a keyframe in this point in time. And again, you can zoom in here by pulling this in and out. Now what keyframes do are they're basically just setting a property's value at a certain point in time. So at any point in front of this keyframe, or behind this keyframe rather, my audio level is going to be 0. Now if I come over here, and if I change the value, let's say I bump it up to 6, I bump it up as high as it can go here, you see that it automatically creates another keyframe, and then it actually translates the time in between these two keyframes. So everything behind this keyframe is going to be 6, and then between this keyframe that's set to 6 and the next keyframe, which is set to 0, it translates. So as time goes on, it's going to slowly ramp that down. So we want that to be a little bit tighter. I think we want to have welcome be full volume, and then right before he changes up, we can pull this forward. And again, this will snap. You can see how it snaps there. Let's see a little bit better action. We can zoom in a little bit. So yeah, we really want it to snap there because it's a quick change. So let's listen again. Well, let's see. Not great, but I think we'll go with it. All right. So the other thing that we're going to want to do is fade this in. So right now there's a kind of a hard cap that just kind of pops on screen. So there's actually a couple tools that are really nice for doing quick fades. Close this window, though not using it. So the effects panel, again, you can go up the window and effects if you don't see it, has all of these really nice effects and transitions. And what we're going to want to use is an audio and a video, or audio and a video transition. So you can either use constant gain or constant power. It doesn't really matter too much. But either one is going to fade the audio in. So the way we use that is we just select the effect that we want, the transition here, and then click, and we just drag it down. And you'll see how it wants to attach itself to the clip when we put it at the end right there. All right. So you release the mouse, and then we have this nice fade in. So you won't be able to hear it too well, but you can see that it just fades in the track, and it's useful for eliminating pops or things like that that can happen if you just start audio. And let's see, we want a dissolve. Cross dissolve is probably the one we're going to use. So if you click this and drag this down to our video track, what will happen is you'll see it just fade in from black. There you go. Actually, let's see. So I think the audio on this whole one's probably a little bit low. So I think we could probably bump this up a little bit more. Yeah, so let's do it like this. Again, right click on the clip, go to audio gain. And this time, instead of setting it at 0, we're going to bump it up a little bit. We don't want to bump it up too much, but let's say we want to go from 18 to 12. Let's bump it up by 6 decibels. And then listen to this and see, make sure it doesn't peak. There you go. You know, that actually probably helped the beginning too, so let's go back and listen to that. Yeah. Now the one thing you want to be careful of, especially when you're bumping up audio, is that there could be points where it gets too hot. So that's fine, but we want to jump around, and you can see where the peaks are, so we could just jump around and check. Sort of a spot check. Yep. Yeah, you can see where it's clipping right there. So again, this is where the animation tool really comes in handy, because while we bumped up the total track volume, we can selectively animate that down in certain spots. So the way we want to do that is, again, set a keyframe here, slide a little bit forward so it happens over time gradually, and then just bring it down by 6. So what that'll do is, since we bumped this up by 6, so if we go back to the audio again, you can see we're set at 6 right now. And then by animating it back down to -6, we'll actually be back at 0. I know that might be a little bit confusing, but yeah. So now you shouldn't see that clipping, and you can click on the red to clear your clip warning. You know, that's actually still a little bit hot. I don't like that, so I'm actually going to come back. Where'd I go? There you go. I'm actually going to come back and bump that down to -12. I think that'll be a lot better. Alright, and then after the clipping is done, you can animate it back up. So. I lost my place. So, okay. So yeah, we start off at 12 there, and then just slowly ramp back up to 0. And if you really want to make that subtle, you could drag out the time. The longer the time between your keyframes, the less people are going to be able to notice it. So this is actually going to be really noticeable here, if you can hear it. So a lot of times it's better just to, pick some arbitrary time and actually drag your keyframe back to that time. You can, instead of dragging a keyframe, you can also set a new keyframe and then delete the old one. And then that effectively does the same thing. Alright, so got that out of the way, and what we want to do, we've kind of treated the beginning of the video. We know where we're going to start. Now we're going to want to figure out where in this video we want to stop. So I think we probably want to stop after the menu shows up here, the team stats menu. guess we're not going to go to that menu, so maybe we can cut it out a little bit earlier actually. Alright, so we got everything we need here, so why don't we cut right about here. Yeah, this would be a good place to cut. So again, you could just click the end and drag it. Also keep in mind, drag this back out, if I'm going to take my effects like my video dissolve and my audio fade out, I can drag the end of this timeline and it'll keep those clips. Now keep in mind again that that doesn't work if you use the razor tool and you cut this. You can see, you know, those clips, those fade outs aren't going to be here. So usually the way you want to do it is to apply your clips and then, you know, you can just click and drag back. Also, you would probably want to be careful because if you click this, you can actually fade the duration of the fade that way as well. I think I want a short duration there. Okay, so let's match up these beginning pieces. One thing that we want to do is we actually want to create a video, or I'm sorry, a title. Forgot about that part. Alright, so let me show you the way that we do that. So what you want to do is right click somewhere in your project panel. I'm going to create a new bin, which is like a folder, and I'm just going to call it titles because we're going to be creating a couple of these. And then you can right click on titles and just say, just click somewhere and say new item, title. That's what we're looking for. And we'll just call it match number 1. Alright, so here we have match number 1, and we want to call out a couple things. First of all, we want to call out the fact that we are fighting in heavies, so do that. And then on the next line, I think we want to call out the names of the pilots, so NICU versus the Reaper. Then on the third line, what Martin's been doing is actually kind of giving you a little preview of what the score of the match is, what the result is. So in this match, I won, and so what we're going to do is just immediately put the score as 0 to 1. Now this doesn't look very good, so what we're going to want to do is I think set or justify it, and you can do that. Any of your text options are here. You can also change the font, which I think for these I've been using, I think Franklin Gothic, which should come standard on your machine. Let's see, Franklin Gothic medium. Let's see. Actually, I think I like Century Gothic a little bit better. It's a little bit lighter. I think the font's fine, so you can change the font by dragging that back and forth, but I think 100 points is just perfect. And then you can also change the spacing, which actually I do want to do. With this tool, it's called the leading, and what it'll do is just change, as you drag it out, you can see the space between the rows gets bigger, so I think 30 will be 30 looks alright. It's always faster just to type it in. And then what you want to do is justify it in the center. Don't eyeball it. My eyes are not good, so I'm never going to be able to eyeball it perfectly. I always use this, which is use the distribution tools, so you can basically just click vertical center and it'll align it vertically, and then horizontal center and it'll move it to the horizontal center, so you can know that your text is exactly right in the middle of the center. Alright, so now we've created our title, our first title, match 1 here, and now that we've created it, we want to drag it down into our timeline. We'll just butt it right up against the end there. Alright, now because this is an overlay, right now it's over black, but if we were to drag our video behind it, what you'll see is the video actually appears behind the text. So this is where we get to do some nice sort of transition effects. We'll start doing that now actually. So we have our title track, we have our main track. One of the neat features that you can do with animations that kind of just makes the text stand out a little bit more is if you go to the beginning and you put a keyframe on your scale. So the way that if you don't see your add new keyframe, it means you probably don't have your toggle animation set. So you want to set toggle animation, and that'll automatically create a keyframe wherever your timeline cursor is. So then if you drag to the end, what we're going to do is set a new scale. And I think I'm just going to try about 130. What that's going to do is at the beginning of the clip, the scale is going to start out at 100, and then slowly over time what we're going to do is scale it up. And that just sort of has, I think that's a little bit too big. I'm going to change this to 120. We want it to be subtle. But what that does is sort of just subtly changes the text. It makes it a little bit more dynamic and looks kind of nice. So one of the things that I do also a lot is just, I sort of don't like the idea of just having something appear on the screen. So I like fade-ins. So I'm going to put a dissolve on the beginning of this clip and the end of this clip so that it fades in and fades out nicely. Well, that's not what I wanted. So keep in mind with the cross dissolve, you can actually put you can drag it down so that it puts it at the end of one clip and the beginning of another. What that'll do is it'll actually mix the two together like that, which is a good transition if you want to go from one shot to another. But in this case, I don't think I want to. So I'm just going to put the cross dissolve just on this clip alone. How's it doing that? Slide it out a little bit, see if that helps. There you go. Alright, so that's what I wanted. So basically, there we go. That's a good transition, I think. And then the match is going to start and we'll fade out. Now, the other thing that I like to do, which is just a personal thing, is I like when things fade out, especially text, I like to blur it a little bit. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to show you how this works just so you can see the way specifically an effect works. So if we go to our effects, some of the other video effects that we have here, I mean, you have pretty much everything, so don't worry if all of this is a little bit overwhelming. There's literally every effect that you could possibly do in a video is here. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to blur this. So if you click on the Gaussian blur and you drag it down, you won't see anything happen. But that's because if you go to your effect controls for this clip, the blurriness is going to be set to 0. So if you drag it up, you can see how the text sort of blurs out. Now we don't want it to be blurred the whole time, but what I would like to do, you'll see this in a second, is I like to blur out as the text is fading out, and I think that sort of enhances the fade out a bit. So you can see this fades in, and then behind it what we're going to do just by the end of the video is blur it till the point that you just can't read it. We'll take a look and see how that looks. There you go. Again, not something that's that you have to do, but I like the way it works. So I'm actually going to take it and blur it in the beginning. So by the time it comes up to about right there, I want it to be fully crisp. I'm just going to bring it back to the beginning here and blur it up a whole bunch. There you go. So just a quick blur out from the shadows. Sort of makes it seem like maybe it's coming out of the background a little bit. All right, so now let's take a look at our final put together. There you go. So I don't think we need to do any more edits to this timeline. You know, you may want to, if you're editing this, just take a look back at the whole thing, but I think I've taken a look at this clip already before recording, and I think it looks pretty good. So, all right, so we fade out. Now what we want to do is we want to take this title and copy paste it and put it here. But keep in mind, if you copy, if you right click and copy this, and then come down to this spot in the timeline and paste it, you can paste it using Control V. Actually, this is a neat little trick. I'll show you how this works in a second. So if you have two videos that are sort of butted up against each other, and you press Control V, you'll see it completely nukes the video that you already have on your timeline. And a lot of times you won't want that. So if you want to paste something here and actually have it push everything else out of the way, just hold down Shift and Control and then press V. And you'll see it shifts everything to the right a little bit, which is exactly what we want. Alright, so now we have our second match timeline right here. Now if you double click on it and you go and edit, select the text. If you can't edit your text, just double click on it. Now the second match was that we did was mediums. So if I go in here and I type in mediums, you'll see that it updates here, and that's all fine. But what you'll find is that if you go back to the first track, it's edited here as well. And that's because what you really need to be doing is you need to be duplicating your asset here in the project. So what I want to do is I just want to right click, hit copy, and then paste, and what it'll do is it'll make it a new title, and all you have to do to rename a title is just double click on it. Change that to match 2. Okay, so we still have match 1 here. Go back and change this back to heavies so it's correct. And then if we come over to this, we'll see that it changed again, but that's because it's still match 1. We still made a duplicate of the same clip. So really what we want to do is we want to drag match 2 down in here. But then you'll say, oh, it doesn't have these nice dissolves. Luckily, if you right click on this clip and click copy, and then right click on this clip, you can go to this option called paste attributes. And because you copied this one, what you can do is you can paste all of these nice little features right on to that. And so when you do paste attributes, it'll ask you, do you want to paste the Gaussian blur? Yes, we do. Do you want to paste the motion? Yes, we do, because that's what has it zoom in over time in that nice way. So go ahead and hit OK, and so you'll see that it fades in. Or sorry, let's move this out of the way real quick. You could say that it fades in. Oh, sorry. Turn that track off. Anyway. So yeah, blurs out and blurs in. The problem is that we lost our cross dissolves. So unfortunately that doesn't copy over, but it's pretty easy to just come down to your video transition and re-add those. Not too much of a problem there. Alright, so now we have the end of our first match, transitions into the second one. Since we changed, we can get rid of this clip now. Since we changed this here too for second match, that change will not affect title here in match 1. So if you want, we can just go ahead and duplicate all of those. So there's match 2, we had 5 matches, so we want to copy paste. So the other thing is if you go to edit a track, it's going to show whatever's on this timeline behind it, which right now we have text behind it. So if we double click this, it'll show our text on the text behind it. You can always just click this background to get rid of the video behind it. So for match 3, Nick, you and I fought lights, so we'll change this to lights. Sorry, I'm trying to rename this here. Match 4, we did assaults. And match 5, Match 5 we did heavies again. So now what we could do is we could just drag all 3 of those down right here. Over here, copy, and I wonder if you can paste attributes on all 3 of them. Let's see. Everything's selected, paste, yep, all 3 of them got the effect. So all 3 of them will now do the exact same thing, which is great. It's exactly what we wanted. Alright, so now we're going to have to go through the process of identifying all the tracks and cleaning them up and doing all that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this really quick and save you guys the trouble of following along. We're basically just going to be doing the same thing that we did to this track in terms of adding and highlighting things like that, so I won't bore you with the details. Alright, so we've got all of our videos organized and arranged. Let's see, one more thing, I gotta update the scores. So let's see, first match, PremierePro, so 0 to 1. Second match, medium, so it was again PremierePro, so that's 0 to 2. Third match was Lights NICU, so that is 1 to 2. Next match, Assaults. So NICU won that. That was 2 to 2. The last match, Heavies, PremierePro won, so that ended up being 3 to 2. Very close matches. Let's see, I think we got one more audio spike we gotta fix up. Yep. So I'm going to ramp that down. By the way, if you want to do this kind of quick, instead of using keyframes, there's also another thing you can do. You can come in here and cut this right there. Come in here and cut this right here, and then just go ahead and take the level down to the level that you want it to be. So let's put this at like -8. And then just to smooth everything out, we can use a constant power cross dissolve to listen. So that almost clips. If you can see that, that jumps right up to 0. I'm going to put that down just a little bit more, even though it's totally safe. Just doesn't need to be so close. Still pretty close, but I think that's fine. Alright, so that's it. We don't need to end with any titles. I don't think we do that. Actually, one thing, so the last thing that I actually forgot was we usually have, Martin usually has a little ARC7 overlay here. We didn't do that when we were recording. We were just doing a straight screen grab from Carthage's desktop. So what we're going to do is actually add that in post so that we have the same look and feel, and he included that in the overlay here. There's that. Alright, so let's see, so we'll make a new title for this actually. Oh, actually no, we're gonna not do that. There we go, ARC7 Insignia. Alright, so this is a little bit big, obviously. So we're just going to come over here to Effect Controls, and if you click on Motion, you actually get this control box around the image that you can click and drag it, and you can scale it. And I think we want to just put it right here in the corner. We want it to be kind of subtle, so we don't have to make it too big. The other thing that you can do to make this more subtle is to bring the opacity down. And opacity by default has this has keyframes enabled, but we're just going to keep this on the screen the whole time. So I'm just going to take the opacity off and take this down to, I don't know, about, let's say 40 is probably a good number. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Let's try 50. I think I like 40 better. Alright, and then I actually like to put the words ARC7 below it, so I'm going to go ahead and make a new title. Call it ARC7. And I'm going to use the, here I'm going to turn on the video preview again so I can see where it ends up. So, let's see, ARC7. I'm actually going to use the font that Martin sent over. It's called Army. Should be the A's. There you go. Oop. So missed that last part. So if you have certain characters highlighted and you change the font, it'll only change the font on the ones you have highlighted, not the ones you don't. So let's change that for all of them. There we go. Position it, and I want to take this down a bit. Let's see, let's put this around 60. See what that's like. Still think that's a little big. Let's try 40. Yeah, I think that'll work. Alright, so I don't want to get too close. These boxes here are actually your safe borders. This matters a lot more when TVs used to have an overlay, but that's not the case anymore. So on YouTube, you should see all the way out to the edge, but usually you have like a title safe box that is where you want to keep all of your video stuff, and you can see their overlay right here actually aligns with that perfectly. That's generally a good idea. You generally don't want to put stuff right up against the edges. It's okay to do it sometimes, but you want to try to keep it within the title safe border. So I think right there is fine for that. And I'm going to take the title and drag it down here. And then I'm going to want to take this, go back to Effect Controls Motion. Okay, where is that? Sigma. Make sure I have the right track selected. Just center it right above that there. Now it's a little bit weird that the one has a bigger or greater opacity, so I'm actually going to go to this title again, bring the opacity down to 40. There you go. Let's line up the Sigma just a little bit better. I think I like that a little bit more. Yeah. There you go. Now, we're going to want this to fade in and fade out with the clip. So I'm going to actually move these up to their own track up here. And then just select these two, bring them up so they match here. You'll see, even though the video is going to fade in, the insignia and the title just pops in like that. I'm actually just going to go ahead and add a cross dissolve to both of those as well. And then they should fade in with the video. There you go. Looks good. And then I want to move the title up. And select these two, move these guys over, add our cross dissolve. And so if we just scroll through really quick, title comes in, Sigma is there as an overlay, and then Sigma goes up. Alright, I'm just going to copy paste this and add this to the rest, so we'll get to exporting. Alright, so now that we've got our our titles and our overlays and everything set up, I think we are good to export. So at this point what you want to do is sort of a final check over everything. Make sure you don't have spelling mistakes, or that all your audio is good and it's not clipping, that just generally all around everything looks good. And once you've done that, what you're going to want to do is just, like I said, go ahead and export this. So to do that, what you want to do is select your inputs and your outputs. Let's see. So you come over here and press the I key on your keyboard, and that will set an endpoint. You can also come over to here and say mark in. Basically that sets where the video is going to begin when it gets exported. And then you want to come to the end of your timeline here. So make sure you're actually at the end. And then you can click on this one, or you can click O. And what that'll do is it'll set that out point. And you can drag that around if you want to change that. But really, these buttons and O and I are the quick ways to set your beginning and your end. So make sure you save your project often. By the way, I can't say that enough. Premiere crashes from time to time. Your computer crashes. The cat kicks your power cord. Stuff like that happens. So you want to make sure you're saving. Because I know I've spent hours on a project that I hadn't saved, and when somebody comes along and messes up a couple hours of work, it's really disappointing. Okay, so now that we have our inputs and our outpoints, what we're going to want to do is just come up to File, go down to Export Media. And so now you can review the video. You can see that it is all the glory that it is. Great, so this is our input, this is our output, this is what everything's going to look like when it's done. And settings. So we want to export video, we want to export audio. Here's where we get to pick the name. So I'm going to name this First Year Games 1v1 NICU versus BitReaver. And then preset. We don't want to match source. What we want to do is format this so that it's easy for YouTube to process. So when you go to preset, just come up here, and Premiere comes with a preset for YouTube. If you scroll down, it takes a little while, but YouTube. Now what's our let's see, we captured this video was captured at 1680 by 1050. So how do we want to do this? We're still doing 1680 by 1050. Let's start off with the YouTube 1080p preset. Now that's going to change our width and our height because we're setting it to this preset, but it also sets like the bit rate and everything that we want there. Oh no, I just messed it up. Do that again. You'll see as soon as I went and changed, I accidentally changed the aspect ratio. As soon as I did that, it set the preset to custom. That's what we're going to want. So let's choose 1080p again, and you can see that sets our bit rate to about 16 megs per second. But what we're going to want to do is change this width and this height to actually match the source. So then we just come in and we take the width, and you can see what happens when you have a rendered output. So our source looks like this, but then the video got a little wider here, so it's actually putting these bars on the end. And actually, you know what? We'll just do that. We'll have bars in there. It's fine, because that's what the YouTube's going to do anyway. Actually, I'm going to match it. I'm flip-flopping. So I'll show you guys how to do this stuff anyway. So switch over to 1050. And we're good. Now our source and our output matches, and we have YouTube optimized settings. Again, our preset flipped to custom from YouTube, but all the other settings are the same as what we would be exporting with for YouTube. So, just to give you a quick overview of the tabs, we can add sort of like effects that'll kind of change the coloration. Some of these might be kind of cool, but we're not going to do that. Again, image overlays. so you can take an extra image. We did that here, but I think we don't want it to mess with like the titles and stuff like that, so I think the way we did that was fine. There's a whole bunch of different settings that you can explore. Video is exactly how your video is going to be encoded. Audio, again, nothing to change here, just select your preset. Muxer, same thing. Captions, not needed. Publish is actually kind of nice because you can automatically, when you export it, it'll automatically publish it to like Vimeo or YouTube or something like that. Hasn't been working too well on my machine. I'm not sure why. When I try to sign in, it just doesn't work, so I'm going to skip it for now. You can try that out if you want to. So once you have all of your sequence settings matched and everything looks good, just want to go ahead and hit export. And this will run the process, and what you should come out with at the end is a final video. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to walk people through the process. The more people we have recording, the better. And I think this is a lot of fun anyway. So again, thanks for watching and enjoy.